Carol, what's your name? And we met Chuck when I was about 8, I believe, when Carol and Tor lived in Encino. And they just, this whole group of friends is so great. A lot of you know Sandy Tiller. And she couldn't be here today because she's in Costa Rica. And she wrote last night a letter that she wanted me to read to all of you. And I've only read it over maybe once here, but I would like to read it. And it's about how they met, and it's a great story that I had never heard. But years ago, I lived with Chuck. Both my mother and I were roommates with Chuck in Los Feliz. And we had a great craftsman-style house that we lived in, and we had some great parties. And this is about the time we met Mark and Laurel, and they came into our lives at Cricket. You weren't around yet, Kate. You came around at probably one of our crazy parties. So anyway, without any more delay, this is for Chuck from your friend Sandy. Back in 1975, Westwood Village had a street fair every Saturday night in the arcade at the corner of Kinross and Broxton. I was 22 at the time, and I was there every weekend selling my handmade leather goods, stuffed animals, and puppets. Has anyone ever seen Sandy's puppets? They're amazing. They're so great. One night, a perplexed-looking young man stopped by my booth and stood holding a furry hand puppet while staring at me for a long time, twitching like he was about to say something, standing patiently while other customers came and went. He had long, curly brown hair and a little beard and brown eyes, as soft and as kind as a doe's. See, he really did get the lady, didn't he? After a while, he asked if I could make a rabbit puppet. Has anyone ever used that line? He took two or three attempts at the question before I understood what he said, as he mumbled quietly through a little open grin, looking at me nervously while he spoke. I wasn't sure about this guy, but I said sure, and he paid me $15, and we agreed that he would come by my booth next week to pick up the rabbit. That was how I met Chuck. He did come back the next weekend. He picked up his puppet, moved through the arcade a few times afterwards, and then disappeared. After closing, when I was going back and forth, packing up my table and wares into my leaf green Pontiac Le Mans, suddenly there he was, and he asked me if I'd like to get coffee or something. Later he told me that this was a task suggested earlier in the evening by the psychiatrist. How does he get around? I don't know. I'm a little crazy. How about we have some coffee? Sorry. It doesn't say that here in the letter, by the way. Nevertheless, it was the beginning of a conversation that sometimes paused, but never stopped, even now. It was through Chuck that I met nearly everyone in our group from the 80s, and you all know who you are. So thanks to this forward gesture in the arcade that night, for a decade or so of our 20s and 30s, we became intertwined with various combinations of each other, children, parents, pets, and pop-up books. And for that, I'm grateful. Chuck was a deep blend of shy, serious, smart, and funny, and he was my best friend for a very long time. We shared a house as roommates for many years, along with ideas, philosophy, laughs, friends, family, and endless streams of time. Chuck was just always there, and I've loved Chuck, always loved Chuck. He is part of my core, and he will always be a big part of who I am. This planet will not be the same without him, but without a doubt, his story will continue through his art and his books, and through us all. I thought I would share just a few of the life-changing things I've learned from Chuck. That going to a Tom Waits concert might confuse a girl on a first date. That coffee shops are always open and that there are always people there. That a good way to show your daughter how much you love her is to build a dollhouse together. That Disneyland really is the greatest place on earth. That science fiction is good reading because it takes you somewhere else. That magic is actually magic. Although he will argue, you can either argue with him about that, he'll tell you it's not real. When you see someone down on their luck, say, there, but for the grace of God, go I, and feel in your heart what that means. Whenever I say these words, Chuck is always with me. that Joe Pass was the greatest guitarist there ever was, that the console of the Starship Enterprise was actually made from thick pens, thumbtacks, and springs painted white. Then it really doesn't matter who's right. That it's a reasonable thing to mount a fragile neon buffalo on a 1-ton slab of granite and hang it on your wall. That it's possible to buy the perfect gift for all of your friends and family in just one afternoon, 3 hours walking around Westwood Village on a Christmas Eve. That if you're going to do something, do it right. That eventually the job will be finished. That old radios contain the spirits of the people that once gathered around them to listen. That Groucho Marx spoke the truth. Now it says here that you must read it with the Groucho Marx accent. I bet Mark Thurston could do this. Get over here. A child of 5 would understand this. Send someone to fetch a child of 5. A man is only as old as the woman he feels. Those are my principles, and if you don't like them, well, I have others. And lastly, that the world is truly an incredibly wondrous place, that one has no choice but to laugh and cry at the same time, which is what I'm doing right now. Thank you. I was crying last time when I did this. So I got it out. So this is from Sandy.